What is up, my fellow gamers out there? I played the worst RPG game which exists on the history of gaming. Well, if you check Descent to Undermountain, it has a whopping 4.8 score on mobile games. If you check any kind of Reddit thread or any kind of old review forum, everybody's saying this is a terrible, broken mess. It's unplayable, full of bugs, crashes, and it's just unworth to play. And even the product is not even finished. It has been released with like a rush because the developer said that it's not ready, we cannot release it, but the company said we don't care, we have to release it. So I know what you're thinking of now, why I would waste my time on this game. And yes, the question is fair, and normally, typically, I avoid these kind of games because I think this just to play really broken and bad games is just a waste of time, because when there are so many games out there which are good and it's old school and modern games, so it is, in my opinion, it's not really a point to waste your time in these kind of games. So why I played it? Because I just finished a fantastic fantasy book from Mark Anthony. This is Escape from Undermountain. And if you not know what Undermountain is, this is a massive mega dungeon created by a mad wizard. And it has loads of levels, crazy traps and monsters, and it's really cool place. And what is really cool about it is how you enter it. The dungeon itself, it sits under the city of Waterdeep. And in the city of Waterdeep, there is this inn, the Yawning Portal, where adventurers are gathered. It's like a cozy little inn. And in the middle of the inn, there is a well, where brave adventurers can go down to the dungeon. And just a really quick side story here. In the book, a few adventurers went down to the Undermountain dungeon, and they looted, and of course monsters came, and half of the party has been wiped out. Only one adventurer made back to the entrance to the well. And the problem was that he hasn't had any gold left. And the rule is one gold to go down, one gold to go up. If you haven't got the gold, they're not going to lower the rope, so you cannot go up. And the folks and the adventurers up in the inn, they were sitting, enjoying their drinks and listening how the last adventurer in the dungeon has been slain. So it's a really cool place. And the problem is that the only way to experience the Undermountain dungeon is throughout this game, because this is the only game which exists. And I know that Eye of the Beholder game is technically could be the same dungeon, but in my opinion this is a bit more like how the game should be. And I'm going to talk about my experiences with this game, and to be honest, I was a bit surprised, because before I started to play, I was ready to... I expected everything. Crashes, horrible bugs, and it's unplayable mess. But I was actually surprised, and I have to say that I somehow enjoyed the game as well. So I was not annoyed, and it triggered some PTSD from the late 90s PC gaming scene for me. But the fundamentals for this game is okay. So let's jump in the video, and I'm going to tell you everything and my experience about Descent to Undermountain. So prepare some patches and hold on to your butts, because this is going to be a rough adventure. Are you ready? Let's get started. As I absolutely love dungeon crawlers, fantasy RPGs and old school AD&D games, Descent to Undermountain always fascinated me. Not because it was good, but because it was the only game set in the legendary Undermountain, one of the most iconic mega dungeons in the entire Dungeons & Dragons universe. And after reading Escape from Undermountain, I became even more curious. I wanted to see this place for myself, even if the game itself was infamous, just the dungeon itself. For those unfamiliar, Undermountain is basically fantasy nightmare fuel. A gigantic underground labyrinth beneath the city of Waterdeep in the Forgotten Realms setting, created by the insane archwizard Halaster Blackcloak, also known as the Mad Mage. And this isn't just a dungeon, this thing is legendary. I'm talking about enormous underground cities, even forests and deserts underground, unimaginable monsters, traps created by a mad wizard, magical experiments, forgotten treasure, portals to unknown places, and in-out danger to kill adventurers for generations. I don't know how about you, but as an RPG nerd, I want to go down to this place straight away. And at the surface sits the famous The Yawning Portal, a tavern where adventurers gather before literally descending into the darkness through a giant well in the middle of the inn. Which is one of the coolest fantasy concepts ever created. I'll just love it. There was a crazy story in the book where a group of adventurers went to the dungeon and only one of them barely made it back to the well with hordes of monsters behind him. He was shouting to the bartender to lower the rope so he can climb in, but as he had no money, he couldn't pay the fee, so his screams were echoing throughout the inn. So, the moment I reached the Yawning Portal in the game, I got excited. Literally, I was standing there, and despite all the bad reputation, it actually felt like the entrance to Undermountain. Unfortunately, the story behind the game itself is almost as chaotic as the dungeon itself. Descent to Undermountain was developed by Interplay Entertainment and released in 1998. Now, on paper, this should have been amazing. Interplay had experience with RPGs, the AD&D license was huge, and dungeon scrollers were still popular. But the development became a disaster. The game was built using the Descent engine, originally designed for the fast-paced sci-fi shooter Descent. And trying to force a fantasy RPG into that engine was apparently a terrible idea. The game reportedly had an extremely troubled development cycle, deadlines were tight, stuff were changed, features were cut, and many systems simply weren't finished properly. I don't know if the developers were aware that the game was basically a complete mess, but they were forced to release it anyway. But once the game has been launched, players immediately noticed. Reviews at the time were brutal. Critics complained about the constant bugs, the crashes, the unfinished mechanics, the poor balancing, the broken quest, and technical instabilities. And I had to say that a lot of criticism was deserved. Because even today, getting this game running properly feels like preparing an ancient cursed artifact. And I'm not exaggerating here, guys. To set up and start the game brought up PTSD for me back from the 90s, when most of the time my PC was not powerful enough to handle the games that I wanted to play, and I have constantly tinkered with different settings and extended memory support for a game to be able to run somehow. Well, these are the things that I'm not enjoyed back then, and I don't have nostalgic memories about these things. So, before I started my journey to Undermountain, I had to make my preparations. I installed the latest official 1.3 patch, and I felt a bit better as an actual patch has been released, so I wondered how many bugs has been fixed by it and how many left. After the patching has been finished, I read the manual like some ancient wizard studying forbidden knowledge and mentally prepared myself for suffering. Then I launched the game. And immediately the intro started lagging and breaking apart like the game itself was trying to escape existence. This was when I started to have serious concerns, because even if the intro crashes and bugs out, what can I expect from the game itself? But I was already started, there was no turning back. Undermountain was waiting for me. Oh, I forgot to mention that I noticed a so-called savefix.exe file sitting next to the main game executable. So even if the save games can be bugged or can be corrupted, Jesus, what am I got myself into? But, surprisingly, once I actually got into the game, it wasn't completely awful. I managed to move around in the main menu, change some settings, and the character creation had proper AD&D mechanics. I can choose stats, skills, classes, and spells. And as someone who loves old school RPG systems, I already seen that the developers put effort into this part of the game. And then I finally arrived at the Yawning Portal. Adventurers everywhere, or more like weird goblin-like creatures, and the famous descent waiting below. And for a brief moment this game actually captured the fantasy adventure feeling I was hoping for. I was aware that the game is buggy and I will have issues, but I was looking forward to descent into Undermountain. The first few minutes were actually surprising as I managed to move around, look up and down, speaking about the immersive mode this is, where you can freely look around the environment. And this was surprisingly cool for the time, and wandering through dungeon corridors genuinely felt atmospheric. So I started to explore the halls, had my first fight, which went surprisingly well. I gathered loot, and I experienced the item management, which was absolutely fine. Even I noticed small details, like when you grab an item, a red square shows where you can place it in your character screen. I also enjoy the flavor text. At some places in the dungeon, some flavor text appears on the screen, which strengthens the fantasy vibe of the game. Also, you can talk to some creatures, and you have multiple question and answer options in the conversations. I found this is quite cool as well. And despite the rough edges, I was actually enjoying myself. Also, I had some hopes that I can put some hours into the game, and maybe people were exaggerating how bad this game is. Now, don't get me wrong, the bugs are real. I noticed some really annoying things, like sometimes climbing a ladder could get you permanently stuck on the top. Yes. Sometimes things simply stop working, like a door which should be open permanently could close and there is no way to open it. You can stuck inside enemies. Yes, you heard that right, and don't ask me how this is possible, but it is. And numerous serious bugs which really causing issues. I quickly learned to save every few minutes like my life depended on it, because it did. Oh, there is a ladder. Okay, let's save before I can go up, and just in case I got stuck on it. Door is not behaving as it should. Reload and try again. Oh, now it works. And then came the moment that perfectly summarized this game. I had almost completed the first quest. I had loot, better gear, I had gold, what I wanted to spend in the town of Waterdeep. I survived the dungeon, completed the first mission, and I was ready to return to the Yawning Portal to pay my fee to enter the inn. And I had to go through a teleport which sent me back to the other part of the dungeon, and it needed some loading. Okay, fine. But then this happened. What the hell? The loading screen crashed every single time. My PTSD from the 90s triggered again so hard. So, what I did, I started to give the emulator ultimate power. A 200 MHz MMX Pentium processor with 64GB of RAM which would handle Unreal or any hardcore game from that time. I even lowered the resolution of the game, tried loading a different save game. First, I loaded the buggy one, but I had the same results over and over again. I was defeated. Not because of the boss, not because I failed, not because the dungeon defeated me, but because the game itself literally refused to continue. And that is Descent to Undermountain in one moment. A game where the greatest enemy isn't the monsters, it's the code itself. Yes, sure, I could go on and tinker with it for hours. Literally, I did for half an hour, to be honest. And I probably could continue, but no, that was it for me. If I wouldn't have stuck there, I would probably do a few more quests if the experience would be the same as it was back then. Because despite the negative things, I was somehow enjoying my time in Undermountain. And honestly, that's what makes this game so fascinating. Because underneath all the technical disasters, there's actually something here. You can see the ambition, you can see the AD&D systems trying to work, you can see the atmosphere they wanted to create. And if the game had been given more time, more polish, and a stable engine, I genuinely think it could have become a cult classic dungeon crawler. Instead, it became one of gaming's infamous broken RPG disasters. But somehow, I'm still glad I played it even for a short time, because sometimes exploring gaming history means digging through broken curse relics to find the interesting ideas burning underneath. And Descent to Undermountain absolutely feels like one of those relics. It may be unfinished, it is broken, but for a brief moment I actually believed I was descending into Undermountain. In my normal game reviews, at the end of the review, I always do a section why I talk about if you should play this game or not. And I think in the case of this game, it's very easy to say that no, you shouldn't play this game, because this is basically, it's just an unfinished product. And even if you are like me, you enjoy the scenery of the dungeon and you would like to experience it, this is not the best way, because it's just so broken. And even myself, let's talk about the dungeon itself. It's, for me, it's too bright, and it's somehow, I don't know, it's because of the Descent engine, but it's so like really narrow, and the spaces are, I know it's a dungeon and it shouldn't be like a huge holes, but it somehow was too cramped, and it was cozy, it would be the best way to describe the dungeon. So it wasn't really scary for me, and it's yeah, but it's just my personal opinion. But the thing is that yes, because it's so broken, and it requires so much tinkering and just changing around. Of course, if you enjoy that, feel free, but I don't think that the game is worth it. What the sad thing is that the fundamentals are very good, because everything which like the AD&D engine is there. The characters are really cool, and I think the thief, the mage, so everything is there, and they have special abilities. And if the game would be playable, I'm sure that I would spend 5, 6, 8 hours playing it, because it's the potential is there, but because it's a broken mess, it's just not. But in a way, I'm happy that I experienced this historically terrible game. But in the future, I'm going to play normal playable games, because I don't want to waste my time on these games, because it's just too many to play on my backlog. So this was Descent to Undermountain. If you want to see a really good RPG which is definitely worth playing, check out this one, because this one is definitely good. I made a review video about it. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching it, and I'm going to see you in the next Backlog Quest video. Goodbye.